Today we talk about a compliance requirement that many dealers have never heard of and don't realize applies to them. But if you get hit with an audit for this, you will be shocked about how difficult and expensive it is to get into compliance.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back, and on this episode, we're talking about a very specific compliance requirement. Now, as a used car dealer, there are all sorts of laws that you know about that you have to comply with on an ongoing basis, stuff that gets talked about all the time. This is stuff like TILA, the Truth in Lending Act, ECOA, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the Uniform Commercial Code, and possibly something like your state's Uniform Consumer Credit Code or Retail Installment Sales Act. This is stuff that we deal with all the time. We know about it. We've been audited on it. And we have compliance measures in place. And if we don't have compliance measures in place, we're working really hard to get into compliance. But there is a really important but rarely talked about compliance requirement that can come up and bite you. First, I got to start with a disclaimer. Now, I am not an attorney. None of us here are attorneys. I am not providing legal advice. This is all for information only. If you have questions about this, you need to consult an attorney. We don't provide a warranty of the information provided here. It may be wrong. There may be errors. Again, we're not attorneys, but we're trying to bring this to your attention because it is an important compliance requirement that you can encounter. Now, drum roll, what is this law? It's state escheatment laws, also known as unclaimed property laws. Now, you probably have heard of these and don't entirely realize it. You get ads occasionally for escheatment search companies. We know that the state of Colorado owes you so much money, and for a fee, we're going to help you recover that. That's the underlying law that we're talking about today. So how does this law apply to you? Well, the details can vary from state to state. But in short, unclaimed cash property owed to your customers, if not claimed by your customer over a certain, what's called dormancy period, has to be turned over to the state. So this is everything that's going to be basically an uncashed check to your customers, refunds, overpayments, insurance distributions, anything like that, where you're owing a payment to your customer. If that check isn't cashed, if that money isn't claimed after a dormancy period, then it has to be reported and turned over to the state, who will hold on to it in perpetuity. They will hold on to it forever for the rightful owner to claim it. Now, this is a challenging law to comply with for small businesses. First of all, the dormancy period is typically pretty long. It's, depending on state law, somewhere around that 5 to 7 year range. And that's challenging to track if you don't have a process in place. We are not really in the habit of looking at accounting items from 5 or 7 years ago and making a report to the state on it. And so you have to have a conscientious program in place. Now, there are audits that enforce these laws, and if you have the bad luck of getting one of the audits, the look-back periods for these audits can be really long. So the dormancy periods can be 5 or 7 years. The audit look-back periods are even longer than that, something like 10 years. And it's going to, of course, depend on your state. And that puts you right up against the upper limit of record purge schedules that accountants and lawyers typically give you. Often those record purge schedules don't consider the requirements specified by these unclaimed property acts. And when you do have one of these audits, it's possible to find that you owe a lot of money to your state treasurer in escheated funds. So my recommendation is you start looking at it now before an audit comes up, before it's an issue. And look into your state specific law and try to head off the problem from the very get-go. So work to get your customers their money so you don't have to go through the achievement process in the first place. So if you send to a customer at their last known address a refund or some funds owed to them, and they don't cash that check, have someone give them a call and try to get a good address and void the old check and issue them a new check to a good address. Try to deal with it before it gets to a point where 7 years down the road, you're trying to find out who has unclaimed property in your possession and trying to go through a due diligence process and then get it reported to the state and figuring out that you owe thousands of dollars to the state achievement process. Head that off at the beginning. Make sure your customers get the money that's owed to them, and that way you don't have to go through this grueling process. Still, it's something that all dealers need to be aware of. It applies to all dealers, new car dealers, used car dealers, buy here, pay here dealers, independent dealers, franchise dealers. Everyone has payments that they make to their customers that sometimes don't get cashed. Definitely something to be aware of. And with that, it's been another episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.